पॉलिसी कौन बना रहा है? गवर्नमेंट। तो हम कहते हैं कि पॉलिसी तब अच्छा बनता है जब लोकल पीपल इन्वॉल्व होते हैं, जब पंचायत इन्वॉल्व होता है, जब लोग जो सफर करते हैं उनसे मशवरा लेकर आप बनाइए लॉज। इट शुड नॉट बी द गवर्नमेंट बता देता है ये करना है तो कर दिया। यही तो डेमोक्रेसी है। So agency is who is ultimately part of the laws that we make. The article that I told you was the article on magazine called Mint, okay, the Mint, Live Mint. And the article was a star achievement of our 75 years of independence. A star achievement of our 75 years of independence. And this article was written by Indira Rajaraman. So she is an economist who was on the board of RBI. She was also the member of the 13th Finance Commission and a PhD from Cornell, IIT Delhi, IIT Bangalore. So her views matter. A star achievement of our 75 years of independence. Now, this article is essentially about Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, PMGKAY, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. This program was launched on 2020, March, April, and this was supposed to be valid till June of this year. But they've extended the program up to November, December. Okay, so this article is about how good or bad the program was and some things related to the food security aspects. Okay? Now, first quickly, some facts, some details about what is this program? Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. 5 point likh lo aap. Number one, it is a component of food security. Number one, it's a component of food security where the poorest of the poor, we also call these as priority individuals or priority households. The poorest of the poor hain, they are also called as the priority individuals and the priority households. Now, they were to be given about 5 kg of rice or wheat plus 1 kg of dal per month. And the beneficiaries are identified. How do you identify them? You identify them by another program called as Antodaya Yojana. Antodaya Anna Yojana. ANTO, Antodaya, ANTODAY, Antodaya Anna Yojana, AAY. And somewhere there is role of the local administration, the role of the local panchayat who helps identify who are these people. Okay? Food security program, 5 kg rice or wheat plus 1 kg dal for the poorest of the poor. They're called as the priority households or the priority individuals. And these individuals are identified on the basis of Antodaya Anna Yojana. This is an older program that predates the Food Security Act also. ये काफी पुराना program है, Antodaya Anna Yojana. इसके अलावा, the beneficiaries were given through PDS, Public Distribution System, and also given through direct benefit transfer, through PDS and through direct benefit transfer. And this is one of the largest food security programs, one of the largest food security programs of the world. And बहुत news में था, why? Because we had a managing director of IMF visiting, which was Christina. Okay, Christina as in KRIS. Okay, Christina. She was speaking very high of the program. IMF managing director, Christina Georgieva, Georgiva. She was very appreciative. And this program is so large, it can, Kristalina Georgieva, yes. And the program is so large that it can feed about 2.5 times the US population and approximately 12 times the UK's population. 2.5 times the US population and 12 times the UK population. There's a thing about how big the program was and why it was considered one of the best programs. ये facts हो गया about the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Now, before we enter this, you should have some idea about what is the level of India's food problems. Okay, so quickly, according to NFHS 5, National Health and Family Survey 5, according to NFHS 5, more than 57% of women between 15 to 49 years of age, more than 57% of women between 15 to 49 years of age, and 67% of children, matlab hai 5 years and less, they have problems of severe anemia. They have problems of severe anemia. So India mein hunger problem ka kya status hai? Okay, what are the problems related to malnutrition? Okay, as I repeat, 57% of women in the age group of 15 to 49 years of age, and 67% of children less than 5 years of age have problems of severe anemia. That's anemia. That's fact number one. Number two, India has a very high prevalence of, ये तीन problem है: stunting, wasting and underweight. Stunting, wasting and underweight. ये तीन measures हैं. Stunting का मतलब है the heights are less than expected. Stunting, as in short height. Heights are less than expected. And wasting means the muscles have not developed, so weak bodies. And underweight, the body mass, the underweight children. Now, although compared to NFHS 4, there is improvement in NFHS 5. There is some percentage-wise improvement compared to NFHS 4. There is improvement in NFHS 5. Even then, the percentage of children, okay, malnutrition is still very high. Now, for sake of data, likh lijiye aap, stunting is in about 35.5% of children. Stunting is about 35.5% of children. Wasting is in about 19.3% of children. And underweight, about 32% of children. 32% of children. Okay, आप इसको round off कर सकते हो that stunting and underweight, you can simply say about 1/3 of children. And जो wasting problem है, that's approximately 20%. Round the numbers off. About 20% of children have problems of, okay, being problems of wasting. अच्छा, उसके अलावा write down that India has 1/3 of world's malnutrition. India has 1/3 of world's malnutrition, and half of children less than 3 years of age, half of children less than 3 years of age are underweight. Half of children less than 3 years of age are underweight. That's the extent of underweight. Now, एक और problem ये है that this underweight problem and stunting problem is high even for some of the otherwise economically developed states. Okay, we have got high incidence of hunger problem even in the otherwise economically well-developed states. हम कह रहे हैं, if you look at the states of Maharashtra, लिखो, states of Maharashtra, states of Gujarat, West Bengal and Kerala. I mean, we don't expect these states to have problems of hunger or malnutrition because they're among what's called as the forward states. Okay, Gujarat, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Kerala. They have the highest incidences of malnutrition in children. The highest incidence of malnutrition in children. So what this shows is that malnutrition is a general problem of the country, irrespective of, it's a general problem of the country, irrespective of the levels of economic development. Irrespective of levels of economic development. Acha, now, some of these problems of hunger, malnutrition, they are related to other diseases also. If you are underweight, if you have malnutrition, your susceptibility to infection increases. Susceptibility to infection increases. Khaskar, problems of tuberculosis, problems of pneumonia, and problems of AIDS. There is a social dimension in terms of economic status, there is social dimension in terms of nutritional status that makes a population vulnerable to illness. There is a social status that makes a population vulnerable to illness. In fact, it says that 15% of all diseases, look up, 15% of all diseases are partly because of hunger, malnutrition problems, are partly because of hunger and malnutrition problems. 15% of all diseases are because of hunger, malnutrition problems. Basically, if your body is weak, if you have malnutrition, if you lack nutrition, you are more likely to contract some of these health problems. So India, if you know, is one of the highest incidence of tuberculosis. India has the highest incidence of pneumonia also, and also in case of AIDS. इसका relationship है with hunger problems, relationship है with food security problems. इसके अलावा economically, it's estimated that India's hunger problems results in loss up to 4% of India's GDP. 4% loss in India's GDP and 8% loss in labor productivity. And 8% loss in labor productivity. Okay, and if you are aware, last year 2021 का जो global hunger index था, India ranks 101 out of 116 countries. In the global hunger index 2021, India ranks 101 of 116 countries. So this is an overall picture of what is the level of malnutrition we have and what are the consequences. आपको otherwise also in social discussions talk about problems related to poverty hai, problems related to social economic backwardness hai. Hunger is a major component. This summarizes what is the level of hunger and what are the problems related to hunger. Next discussion, something about the Food Security Act. About the Food Security Act, FSA 2013. Now see, it's not that before 2013, India did not have programs on hunger and malnutrition. ऐसा नहीं है. India runs one of the world's oldest PDS programs. India runs one of the world's oldest PDS, as in Public Distribution System. Okay, तो बहुत पुराना program रहा है. This is part of what we call as our minimum development goals. They are part of our community development goals. They are part of community development goals. They are part of our poverty programs. And right from the first and the second 5-year plan. Right from the first and second 5-year plan. In fact, poverty was a very big agenda under the fourth 5-year plan, 1970s onwards. Okay, poverty has been a major agenda. All of this is inclusive of managing India's poverty issues. So the PDS hai, or the programs for hunger issues, is a very old concept. In fact, one of the old programs is also called as Food for Work program. Food for Work program. So rather than giving them wages, the government was giving them food. So my point of discussion is that even before the Food Security Act was enacted, India mein food programs the. So difference kya? What was difference here? Now see, there are two types of governance systems. Okay, one is called as a governance based on welfare approach. India has been a welfare-based country for a long time. One is the welfare approach-based governance, where there are people who have problems, there are inequalities, there is poverty, there is hunger, okay, there are problems related to lack of jobs, and the government will provide for this as a part of welfare objectives. So, हमारा DPSP देख लीजिए, welfare objectives का list बना हुआ है. Okay, so there is one welfare approach-based governance, और एक तरफ है a new concept called as rights-based government, RBA. Okay, rights-based approach which is different from welfare-based approach. Okay, welfare-based approach mein, somewhere the tonality of program is that it is like a charity work. Like there are beneficiaries and the government is being benevolent. कि हम हम आपका ध्यान रखते हैं, we are caring, we are benevolent. And there is element of charity in welfare approach. But when I move towards rights-based approach, it is no longer about charity. It's about the rights of the citizens. Okay, so we say that these rights, right for drinking water, rights for good housing, rights related to food, rights related to education, implicit hai in our Article 21, right to life. So with 2013 Right to Food Act, okay, or the Food Security Act, FSA, Right to Food or Food Security Act, India shifted from welfare approach to rights-based approach. India shifted from welfare approach to rights-based approach. Okay, this was a very important, because under the United Nations human rights concept, we have two sets of rights. Under the United Nations, okay, human rights approach, there are two sets of rights. One is called as economic and social rights. One is called as economic and social rights. Another is called as your political, okay, and civil rights. The political civil rights, they are about right to vote, right to form government, okay, right to form associations. They are political rights. Economics and the social rights are about, okay, hunger issues. They're about employment issues. They're about right to life and dignity. Okay, so Food Security Act is part of human rights issue. It's a part of human rights issue. See, why I'm mentioning this, there has been a lot of discourse on giving right to food will probably put a lot of burden on the government. It will be a lot of burden on the central exchequer, lot of burden on India's financial commitments. Okay? So ये एक debate था, because of which we said right to food should not be enacted, that government will come under too much of financial burden. Uska counter argument था, financial burden cannot be an excuse to deny people some rights. जैसे कि security rights हैं. You have right to have security, physical, emotional also. There's a right to clean drinking water. A government cannot say that they do not have money because of which they can't give you these rights. Okay? That's why right to food is something that cannot be debated solely on the basis of whether the government can afford it or not. हम बोलते हैं इतना important right है, आप बाकी काम छोड़ दो ना, आप बाकी काम बंद कर दो. But these are some things you cannot, okay, excuse yourself from. Drinking water, a clean environment, a security, a basic job for livelihood, the basic amount of food for sustenance. ये एकदम fundamental से भी fundamental rights हैं. They are called as the human rights. Okay, so despite all political issues, debates के बावजूद, they decided that we must have a Food Security Act. Okay, that's one. Second dimension is, ये जो Food Security Act है, this is based on what we call as the life cycle approach. Is based on the life cycle approach. What we mean by this is that hunger issues is not about an individual who is at a certain age. It's about even before the person is born. There are rights of the unborn child also for food security. There are rights of the fetus also for the food security. We call this as the life cycle rights. Life cycle rights को हम 5 स्टेज में डिवाइड करते हैं. The 5 stages in life cycle right. Okay. The most obvious is rights of infants. Rights of infants. The second is rights of children. Rights of infants. Rights of children. यहाँ पे children along with adolescents. Children and adolescents. The third is rights of the adults. Rights of the adults. Fourth is rights of the aging population. I repeat, right of the infants. Infant is somebody who is less than 1 year of age. Right of infants. Number two is rights of children and adolescents. So I'm talking about, okay, right up to age of 18, age of 17, tak, adolescents. Right of adults above 18 till about the age of 48, 50 is adults, and beyond that is the aging population. ये 4 levels हैं. इसके ऊपर ऐड कर देते हैं rights of the fetus, the unborn baby in the womb. Unborn baby in the womb. The moment we add a right of fetus, it becomes the rights of food security for the pregnant mothers and expecting mothers. They have a different type of food requirements. The different type of food requirements. इसको बोलते हैं lactating mothers का requirement. LACTATING. Lactating mothers food requirements. Plus the requirements of pregnant women. Lactating mothers means a mother whose baby is dependent on breastfeeding. Lactating mothers and also pregnant women. So ये 5 components हैं in terms of life cycle. Now, the Food Security Act says, write down this point here. The Food Security Act says, okay, इसमें 5 point. Number 1, food security for the malnourished children. Food security for the malnourished children. इसमें include होता है the special needs of child less than 5 years of age, special needs of children less than 5 years of age, adolescent children, okay, and special care for adolescent girls. Special care for adolescent girls. Okay, because of menstrual cycle and lack of proper food, they have got very high levels of anemia. Rights of girls. The next component is, it says that the pregnant mothers and lactating mothers will not get less than 6,000 rupees per month. Will not get less than 6,000 rupees. So you are supporting the mother additionally. Then food security allowance if there is non-supply of entitled food grains. Food security allowance if there is non-supply of entitled food grains. मतलब किसी वजह से अगर हम लोग food grains नहीं दे पाए, then we have to give them allowance in terms of some, okay, cash benefits. So you're looking at an act which is not only about giving food. An act is taking care of rights of children, rights of teenagers, rights of adults, rights of mothers. And even if you are having problems related to food, अगर नहीं है आपके पास, then the state government and the local institutions, they are duty bound to support the person with some other benefits. They must give them some kind of cash. We call this as the life cycle approach in Food Security Act. Okay? So you understand 3 things. What is the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana? You understand the extent of malnutrition in India and the consequences. And third, in brief, what is this Food Security Act? By the way, you should also know that the Food Security Act was supposed to benefit 81 crore population. And it has already addressed more than 80 crore population. So, काफी parity in terms of who we want to benefit. It was supposed to benefit 81 crore of India's population, according to 2021 estimates, and it has already addressed the concerns of 80 crore population. 80 crores population. ये आपका background हुआ. Now, what Indra Rajaraman is saying, that these 2 programs are perhaps the most important programs in our 75 years of independence. She starts the article by saying that we have problems of bank recession, we have problems related to pandemic, problems of inflation, problems of debt default. But India ka ye 2 program stands out as the star achievement in 75 years of India's independence. That's where she starts the article. Okay. Now, then she says that ye possible kaise tha? How were these 2 programs possible? Okay. Now, possible because of four things. लिख लीजिए आप. Why was the Food Security Act possible? And why was the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana possible? Because of four things. Number one, it was possible because of expansion of PDS. अगर आपका PDS system in place नहीं होता, where you have got ration cards, where you have got ration shops, where we have the data collection that has been done, अगर वो नहीं होता, this program would not have succeeded. So somewhere kudos to the distribution network that we have developed. Okay, along with the data collection. Data collection में बहुत important role रहा है अंत्योदय अन्न योजना. Okay, they have been a very important component of the data collection. Why was it possible? That's one. Second is, it was possible because of India's agricultural revolution, the green revolution, because of India's agricultural revolution or the green revolution. So India, after 1960s, green revolution was launched in 1966. Green launched in 1966. So after 60s, India has been more or less a food grain surplus country. It has been more or less a food grain surplus country. Okay, so we are producing more than 300 million tons of food grains. So we are more or less food grain surplus country. So there is an element of food grain self-sufficiency. An element of food grains self-sufficiency. Okay. Third reason is our welfare approach. Okay, and that has now graduated towards the rights-based approach. Our welfare approach that has now grown towards rights-based approach. And a fourth very important reason कि ये possible क्यों हुआ है is also our media and our democratic setup. Media and the democratic setup. In fact, इसी पे very famous argument of Amartya Sen रहा है. Amartya Sen says, a country that has democracy and vibrant media will not have famines. A country or a nation that has a vibrant media and has democracy will not have famines. इसलिए because the famines हो सकता है, the media can highlight, the democratic process can force the governments to take up the issues. So four reasons why this was possible. Why this was possible. Achha. Next. Now this is a very interesting argument. So Indira Rajaraman says that she was initially opposed to this idea. Achha, now thoda sa board dekho aap log, all of you. Look at the board. Let me explain it on the board. Now see, I hope all of you understand what do we mean by the concept of subsidies. ये आपको, I presume, understand. Subsidies क्या है? Is some kind of financial support है, support that reduces the prices of products. Okay, it makes the products cheaper. Okay, so food subsidy का मतलब है the government is making the price cheaper. और ये होता कैसे है? How it happens is because the government takes the responsibility of sharing the costs. What's a subsidy? At a very, very loose definition, it's a type of a financial support that reduces the prices of products or services. Product or services. So, बिजली का कीमत 10 रुपया है. The government reduced the price by saying that we will take the price of 7 rupees. हम payment करेंगे, आप payment करो 3 rupees. कोई food का कीमत 20 rupees है. The government says we'll make it cheaper. We will pay probably 18 rupees. You pay 2 rupees. So in subsidies, the government takes the responsibility by sharing the cost or the price of the product. It's called subsidies. Now, in food, okay, there are three ways of giving subsidies. One is we can give subsidies at the level of agriculture inputs. I can make fertilizers cheaper. We can make irrigation water cheaper. We can make the seeds cheaper. Okay, we can make agricultural implements cheaper. So we can give subsidies at the level of agriculture inputs. That's one way of supporting food. So you have subsidies here. The agricultural products are therefore cheaper. So when they are cheaper, it is easy to buy. Okay. Therefore, you are having food security. This is one way of success. Second is lactating mothers. Think of supporting the old populations. Okay, so I have some programs where children can be given nutrition directly. Have you heard about midday meal scheme? We have the midday meal scheme. We have a program called as Integrated Child Development Services, ICDS program. Okay. Lactating mothers के लिए also we have got some programs. ठीक है. Anganwadi programs, they support the mothers, lactating mothers and the pregnant mothers. And we also have programs for the old age population, a program called as Annapurna program. You've heard about recently launched a program called as Poshan, Poshan. This is for children, in particular, the girl child. So what we can do is we can give food directly to the vulnerable populations. So you give the children, you give the mothers, you give the old population. So what you're doing is you are identifying, we are identifying the vulnerable groups and supporting them. अच्छा, ये support कैसे किया जाता है? This support is given through schools. This support is given through hospitals. This support is given through dispensaries. Okay, so a mother comes to dispensary or a clinic, and there she is given some kind of food supplements or some medicines. The child goes to school or midday school ho gaya. The person goes to hospital based on his health, is given some kind of a benefit. Okay, so one way of supporting the population is you give agriculture subsidies. The second is you identify the vulnerable population, the groups, and give them the food requirements. So midday meal schemes, ICDS programs, Anganwadi programs, Annapurna programs. These are some of the programs, okay, which are about supporting the disadvantaged groups. The third way of supporting population is, okay, is benefiting directly the poor households. Okay, something like, if you know about direct benefit transfer, DBT, you are benefiting directly the poor households. इसमें क्या करते हैं हम लोग? That think of PDS. PDS is something like supporting the households directly. Okay, or if you understand the woman who is 18 years of age and above, she is considered the head of the household, and you give money into her account. You're having household-based support. Now, Indra Rajaraman says that this she was not very supportive about. She was okay with the idea of subsidies here and vulnerable population here. This was something she was against. Why? So Indra Rajaraman says, ye jo directly at the household level, she is not very comfortable with, or she was. Why? Because household level mein, there are a lot of social issues which can deny people who need the food. Which means it's possible कि घर के अंदर में the girl child is ignored. घर के अंदर में the child who has a physical disability is ignored. घर के अंदर में the old person may be ignored. Partly patriarchal में the woman can be ignored. Okay, so household level में there are chances of inequalities and unfair distribution of food within the house, because India fundamentally is a patriarchal system. India fundamentally has problems of biases against the girl child. So she was not very keen on this type of system. But now she says that this is a great system. Because देखो pandemic में क्या हुआ? Pandemic में आपका school बंद हो गया ना? Like in pandemic, the hospitals were shut down. In the pandemic, all the Anganwadi programs had shut down. So imagine if you had food security as support system in this group alone, फिर तो लोगों को खाना ही नहीं मिलता. Okay, it is because we had the household level food security that ensured that people do not die of hunger and malnutrition. The people survived here. Okay, so now she is saying this is a brilliant program, the Food Security Act, and Khaskar, the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. It's a great program. Why? Because it is directed at the household. Never in our economic history could we have imagined कि schools बंद हो जाएंगे 2-2 साल के लिए. Never we could have imagined that hospitals will shut down and the only priority will be COVID treatment, nothing else. It would have been disaster for countries like India. Okay, very powerfully she writes this. I will read that. At the time, I remember being critical of excessive emphasis on channeling food security through the household. Okay, when countless studies had shown that food distribution within the household was unequal and unfair, I was more in favor of directly targeting vulnerable groups, cutting across households through midday meal schemes in schools, through direct feeding of preschool children and pregnant lactating mothers, through integrated child development schemes and services. These provisions for vulnerable populations were also included in the Food Security Act, but they were of the nature, because of the nature discretionary and add-ons, and there's not much clarity on how they would have managed the household level. At that time, it seemed unimaginable that there could ever be a time when institutions like schools and preschools, Anganwadis, would ever actually close down and lock down because of pandemic. Who would have ever had thought? Who would have ever had thought? Okay, that food security for children could only be ensured through households to which they belong, rather than institutions where they assembled and could not be directly reached. So, after discussion, this is a very important point. Okay, while on the face of it, this looks very efficient, okay, this looks very targeted, but in conditions the institutions shut down, this is perhaps your only option ahead. Okay, so that's why she says is one of the brilliant strategies in managing hunger and food problems. Okay, now I will give you a couple of more facts here that food security as an agenda is one of the most important development goals. Is one of the most important development goals in social and economic development. At the global level, hunger and food security are issues that are looked into by FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. The issues that are looked into by FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. We have had a couple of food summits on this. Okay, FAO defines food security. FAO defines food security very holistically. Defines food security very holistically. So, yeah, aap likh lijiye. What do you mean by food security? Okay, according to FAO. So, the following are the components. One is what's called as availability component. Okay, this is about the production level food security. The production level food security. It's about agriculture performance. It's about soil and water. It is about the type of seeds. How does the government manage agricultural inputs? It's about the status of small and marginal farmers. Okay, one is called as the availability component, which is about the production of food. आप कितना food grow कर पा रहे हो, वो किस पे डिपेंड करेगा? Agricultural reform से डिपेंड करेगा, वो डिपेंड करेगा soil health पे, water availability पे, type of seeds पे, type of agriculture inputs, including credit. What type of loans are you giving? What type of irrigation systems you have in place? It's about the status of small farmers and marginal farmers. जो इंडिया का ग्रीन रेवोल्यूशन था, it was addressing this. India's green revolution was addressing the availability level food security. The country must produce enough food. The country must produce enough food. इसी component के साथ there is a concept related to this is the concept of production stability. The concept of production stability. That whatever production you are doing should be stable. जैसे stable का मतलब क्या है? Okay, it should be able to survive in case of disasters. It should be able to manage itself in times of conflicts. It should be able to manage itself in times of economic recession. The production should be stable production. Disasters should not impact the production. When I say disasters, I'm talking about floods, droughts, we're talking about climate change issues, tsunamis, cyclones. Okay, food production should be stable. Stable against disasters, stable against conflicts. Think of Ukraine, think of Iraq, okay, think of Afghanistan, think of African countries which have conflicts. Okay, think of economic recession, think of Venezuela. Okay, think of what happened during times of great recession. Or abhi ke time mein, think of what happened because of pandemic. So a country or a society should be food secure if it manages its availability component properly. So availability component is about the production level of food security. The second component is the accessibility component of food security. Means it is about the food reaching the markets. This is about the distribution and supply. Distribution supply. It's about the food reaching the distribution centers. Okay, it's possible. Think of example कि खाना पंजाब ने तो बहुत ग्रो किया है, but the food does not reach urban areas or rural areas beyond Punjab. Okay, maybe a lot of production is happening in US and Australia. Okay, but there is no shipment of the products, maybe to the countries that need them. It's about reaching the markets. It's about distribution. Isme you need three things in place. You need to have a very strong storage system. The India mein jo FCI kaam karta hai. You need to have a very good storage system, FCI. Okay. You need to have a very good supply systems, as in road transport, air transport, shipping transport, supply systems. And you also need to have distribution centers. So ration shops, they are like a distribution center. Isko hum log fair price shops bhi bolte hain. See, when you talk about accessibility, you must know one important point here, that urban populations are one of the most vulnerable to problems of accessibility. That's because any society that does not produce food depends on food to be supplied to them. Okay. So agar for any reason, think of Delhi or Mumbai or Kolkata or Bangalore, agar road kharab ho gaya, for any reason the supply doesn't come to urban areas, the urban areas will have severe hunger problems. So think of Kiev. Okay, the supply systems are now broken down. In villages, it is still relatively more common for the farmer to grow his own food. So accessibility mein, the urban populations are very vulnerable. Urban populations are very vulnerable. So one component is the production level component of food security. The second component is the distribution level component of food security. It's about the food reaching the markets. The third component is the affordability component of the food security. It's about the prices. It's about the prices. यहाँ पर आ जाता है concept of food subsidies. यहाँ पर आ जाता है, okay, talking about ration Okay, ration provisions, 1 rupee rice, 5 kgs of free rice, okay, 5 kgs of free rice, or 35 kg of rice per household. It's affordability. India mein, this is done by our PDS system. This is what is also done by your Food Security Act. This is what was being done by Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. They are making the food affordable and people can buy or use the food almost free of cost. Affordability. Okay. So all the three components together, plus there is a fourth component, what's called as assimilation level. Assimilation level food security. Okay. This is also called as utility level food security. It's also called as utility level food security. इसका मतलब ये है, whatever food you consume, the food must enter your body and your muscles. It's about the food converting into one's proper health. It's possible, no, that we are consuming food, but the food is not being absorbed by our body. Why? Because there are problems of other diseases. Say somebody has diabetes, somebody has pneumonia, somebody probably has dysentery or diarrhea problems, somebody has cholera problems. So these are issues related to health of a person. Okay. और इसमें एक बहुत important component है, the component of drinking water, the component of clean drinking water. So water is an essential part of any food security. Clean drinking potable water. इसी component का part है your support systems of primary health care. So for food security, you need to produce enough food. You must ensure that the food reaches the proper distribution centers. Like you must ensure that the food is affordable. People can buy that food. Okay. And you must also ensure the food ultimately is absorbed by one's body. If you know about SDG goals, SDG goal का goal number 2 जो है, it's about removing hunger and malnutrition. Okay, and this includes drinking water access, clean, safe drinking water access. ये हो गया वाला? अच्छा. Now there is another component. The fifth component is called as acceptability component. Now this component is the cultural component. It is the cultural component. Means the food which we grow or the food we distribute must be acceptable to the cultures. ऐसा नहीं है कि somebody is vegetarian and you are giving him non-vegetarian food. Somebody who is a rice eater, you are giving him probably wheat. Somebody who prefers having maybe potatoes and vegan food, you are giving something else to him. So cultural component बहुत important component है. Without this component, okay, social practices and social beliefs can deny a population of its food security. Now, इसमें एक और आ जाता है component, the component of awareness, a component of education भी आ जाता है इसमें. Okay, some people might have problems of wrong beliefs. Okay, some population might have components of wrong practices. So food security must also ensure those practices are addressed and the food requirement are acceptable to the population. There is a production component, there is a component of accessibility distribution, there is a component of affordability prices, a component of health assimilation, and a component of accessibility. अच्छा, इसके ऊपर they have added 3 more one. ये 5 fundamental हैं. Beyond this, there are 3 more components. One component is what's called as a household level food security. Okay. And the special needs of vulnerable populations. Okay. Now see, this is coming down to that level of girl child, coming down to the level of the aging population, or talking about special needs of a lactating mother or a pregnant mother. So it's possible कि एक घर में overall they have enough food, say 50 kg of food per month है, enough food है. But inside the house, there is an old man. Inside the house, there's a girl child. Inside the house, a pregnant mother. So देखा जाए, the production was good, the distribution was good, okay, the affordability was right, and even acceptable culturally. But जब घर तक पहुंच गया, then no guarantee the girl child gets the food or not. No guarantee the old man gets the food or not. That's why we say that the food security must also address the vulnerable populations. Now, this is what some of our programs target. जो ICDS program है, Integrated Child Development Services. Okay, the midday meal schemes hai, the program called as Poshan, okay, which is for health and nutrition of children, including the girl children. Yes, this is about the intra-household, correct? It's about the intra-household level. And kahin na kahin, yahi address karne ke liye, we said that the direct benefit transfer should be, okay, the eldest women of an household or eldest lady of an household. Anybody, any girl or woman who is more than 18 years of age and she's the eldest one. Because then assumption is that the women are more mindful of food for all compared to men folk. The women are more mindful of some kind of food justice compared to the men folk. So the programs we run, you should know what ultimately we're trying to target. What component of food security is being addressed. Okay, so this is those programs which are based on very specific vulnerability mapping. Very specific vulnerability mapping. Household level food security. Okay. Now, the next component is what we have just mentioned, the nutritional security. Okay. So traditionally, food was equal to largely carbohydrates and proteins. This continues to be the most important component even now. Traditionally, food was equal to or equivalent to carbohydrates and equivalent to proteins. Okay. Now we say we also require drinking water. We also require micronutrients. Essentially, the focus is on balanced diet. Balanced diet, जिसमें कि we must have iron intake, we must have iodine intake, we have vitamin A and other vitamins along with amount of healthy fats. When I say nutritional security, we're talking about a balanced diet, iron intake, iodine intake, vitamin A and other vitamins, including the healthy fats. The absence of these is referred to as hidden hunger. Absence of this is referred to as a hidden hunger. Okay? So in India again, somewhere, आपका midday meal scheme, program called as Poshan, We have one more program for the girl child. It's called as Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. It's about girls and even women. Okay, special concerns of girls and women. Matru Vandana Yojana. These are about the micronutrients. They're about the micronutrients. Okay, so apart from the 5 components of food security, we added 2 more. Okay, so this was about your nutritional security, and this was about household level. Now, the 8th one is the component of agency. The component of agency. They also called as food fortification programs. The micronutrients are part of food fortification programs, correct? Now come back to the agency. The agency kya hai? This is the political and the governance component. It's the political and the governance component. Basically, it is the ability of individuals and communities to participate in food related decision making and policies. The ability of the individuals and the communities to participate in food related decision making and food related policies. This is the component of grassroots participation. This is that bottom to top approach. The local population should be part of the decision making approach. जब पॉलिसी बना रहे हैं, पॉलिसी कौन बना रहा है? गवर्नमेंट. तो हम कहते हैं कि पॉलिसी तब अच्छा बनता है जब लोकल पीपल इन्वॉल्व होते हैं, जब पंचायत इन्वॉल्व होता है, जब लोग जो सफर करते हैं उनसे मशवरा लेकर आप बनाइए लॉज. इट शुड नॉट बी द गवर्नमेंट बता देता है ये करना है तो कर दिया. यही तो डेमोक्रेसी है. Okay, so agency is who is ultimately part of the laws that we make, who is ultimately part of the institutions that we make. तो जो डिसीजन लेना है कि जो प्रोग्राम बनेगा वो डिसाइड कौन करेगा, और जो प्रोग्राम बनेगा वो जो लॉ है वो बनाने में किसका हाथ रहेगा. That's what I'm saying. It's about the political and the governance component. कि सही आदमी को खाना मिला नहीं मिला ये कौन डिसाइड करेगा. It should be local population. It should be the local people and their involvement. It is about involving the stakeholders. NGOs participate करते हैं, पंचायत करता है participate. Okay, you'll study what's called as the multi-level planning in India. Okay, how the data and the decisions are taken from the panchayat level to the block level to district level, the state and the national laws finally, or plans finally. So the administration and planning is done at different levels. Okay, this mechanism is the most important mechanism is the role of Gram Sabhas. Gram Sabha and the Panchayati Raj institutions. Gram Sabhas and the role of Panchayati Raj. Isme you can also add the component of social audit. Yes, social audit plus right to information. That is how it should be. हम ही नहीं कह रहे हैं कि सब कुछ हो रहा है अभी. I'm talking about what the FAO says as important components of food security. I'm not saying कि सब कुछ हो रहा है. कहीं ना कहीं कुछ हो रहा है. But for all of this to happen, only then can we ensure and guarantee that food security ultimately is in place. So food security is not about खाना नहीं है, खाना पकड़ा दिया. It's not about giving free food alone. ये पूरा process is part of the food security. Okay, so in totality, you have 8 components of food security: availability, accessibility, affordability, assimilation levels. Okay, you have the component of stability also. In fact, the most interesting part is article का वही वाला था जो बताया मैंने, that subsidies जो हैं, ये वाला part, that why the program requires household levels intervention, क्यों चाहिए? If you relate the components of food security, understand ये important क्यों है. Without this, okay, no assurance the food ultimately will reach the people if there are disruptions in the institutions. In fact, ये criticism रहा है that while the program was a very good program, lot of people were not identified properly. You are right. तो एक होता है, see, there are 3 things. कोई भी program का, there are 3 things. One is concept क्या है? What is the philosophical basis? Idea कहाँ से आता है? कोई भी program आप करो, evaluate करो, एक है philosophical basis है. Second is what is the mechanism? Mechanism and what are those details? कौन करेगा, कितना करेगा? What are the provisions of the program? And third है उसका evaluation, कि कितना successful रहा है. ठीक है, तो philosophical basis क्या है? You've understood this, that you must understand the idea called food security. You must understand the idea called as food as human rights. You must understand that food is also nutrition. ये आपका philosophical basis हो गया. Okay. Mechanism और details क्या है? बताया कि कहाँ कितना टारगेट किया, किसको टारगेट किया, कौन क्या कर रहा है, how much food to be given by what time, वो details and facts हो गया. Evaluation में I'm saying, okay, that this program is a very good concept. The program has helped a lot of people. The program is one of the largest programs. But ये भी fact है, because of lack of proper data, lot of deserving people were not given the food. Plus, इसमें corruptions भी बहुत रहे हैं. ठीक है? So हम कहाँ rule out करते हैं कि corruption नहीं हुआ है? Okay. In fact, my number tells me that in states like Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Jharkhand, Maharashtra, Odisha, Sikkim, even Assam, यहाँ पर the amount of food given was much less than what the people demanded or what the people needed. Okay, तो कहीं ना कहीं corruption issues बना है. So don't dismiss these 2 things just because ये वाला problem हुआ है. So no program is perfect. No program is complete in itself. You could not have had a census in the times of the pandemic. So yes, it was based on 2011 census plus. इसमें बहुत political parochial interests आ जाते हैं. अपने लोग, अपने जाति, अपने community, अपना मोहल्ला, वो problem आ जाता है. And if the executive, like the bureaucracy, responsive नहीं है, तो ये तो बढ़ जाएगा आपका. So yes, whenever you have a grand program, a very big program, there are always problems of corruption. There are always problems of wrong targeting. There will be problems where there are leakages. But not to say you don't appreciate these aspects. ये problem to across all schemes रहा India में. So while it was the largest program, it helped a lot of people. It did support a lot of population and the food requirements. It is definitely required for India's population, but there are problems of wrong targeting and problems related to corruption. Uske baad, okay, the discussion can go on there. That's problem of wrong targeting. It was meant for the poorest of the poor. It is meant for people who are below the poverty line and destitution, people who earn less than $2 a day types. Okay? And the government does not have enough jobs for everybody. तो उनके लिए ये program था. So अगर wrong लोग use कर रहे हैं, the problem is not the idea or the philosophy. The problem is targeting. जैसे कि आपको भेजा गया दिल्ली पढ़ने के लिए और आप पढ़ाई नहीं करके घूम रहे हो, तो प्रॉब्लम थोड़ी एजुकेशन एज एन आइडिया का है. तो प्रॉब्लम है इंप्लीमेंट कैसे हुआ। हमने कहा कि ये पैसे लो एंड गो एंड बाय अ बुक, आपने क्या क्या कि पैसे लेके आप यू आर बाइंग ऑल काइंड ऑफ फ्रिवलस थिंग्स। इसका मतलब थोड़ी है कि किसी को पैसे मत दो। गर्ल चाइल्ड को पैसा दिया गया जाके खाना खा लेना, एंड द गर्ल चाइल्ड प्रोबेबली हैज मिसयूज्ड इट और मे बी लॉस्ट द मनी। तो थोड़ी है कि गर्ल को पैसे नहीं दिया जाएगा। ठीक है, तो अंडरस्टैंड द डिफरेंस हियर। ये आइडियोलॉजी का इशू नहीं है, ये प्रॉब्लम ऑफ रॉन्ग टारगेटिंग है। डू यू अंडरस्टैंड द आइडिया कॉल्ड एज कंसेप्ट ऑफ फूड सिक्योरिटी? The idea called as, what do I mean by household food security? What do we mean by the importance of direct targeting? हम उसकी बात कर रहे हैं. Okay, don't get carried away by some of these issues right now. Okay, this evaluation में you only end up becoming more and more cynical. जैसे कि डेमोक्रेसी दिया था, लोग गलत लोग को चूज कर रहे हैं, तो डेमोक्रेसी बंद कर दिया जाए. It's a wrong way of evaluating. You understand the concept कि आइडिया आया कहां से, what was the objective, what was the need, what are the components, how it is benefiting, okay, how it is able to manage some problems of disruptions, and yes there are problems, usko हम अलग रखेंगे अभी. Don't jump to these evaluations right now. ये बड़े convenient evaluations हैं to dismiss. Okay, सरकार काम नहीं कर रही, सरकार को गिरा दें. That's not how you work. It cannot be irrelevant because of improper implementation. And yes, to be honest, इतना खराब implementation नहीं था. Yes, there are leakages. Yes, there are corruptions. But by and large, this program was a good success. By and large, it did help people in the times of the pandemic. और ये pandemic focus program ही था. प्रधानमंत्री गरीब कल्याण अन्न योजना जो था, it was a pandemic focus program. That's why they will not continue to this with beyond some more months of extension. Okay, अब इलेक्शन टाइम है तो शायद एक आध महीना और एक्सटेंड कर दें. Okay, वो अलग इशू है. Otherwise, this was a good program in the times of the pandemic.